Second, the frequency of the Koran's references to hell and its tortures are alarmingly out of proportion. I have not taken the passages describing retribution out of context. Every early surah has been presented in its entirety. Bad overwhelms good in the Koran. Hell is featured, not heaven. Rebuffing Mohammed's tormentors is far more prevalent than instructing the faithful. Torment is the Koran's most prominent theme. Third, hell in the Bible is separation from God. In the Koran, Allah is the driving force of hell, its creator and manager. Allah wants to be left alone with man so that he can oversee his tortures. This is a fundamental difference between Yahweh and Allah, between Judeo-Christianity and Islam. In the Bible, the reward of heaven is being with God. In the Koran, by contrast, the reward is being with virgins. Communion with Allah isn't mentioned. Fourth, the Bible's depictions of hell are many magnitudes milder. The vividness in which Allah describes the specifics of hell's torments is deeply disturbing, even demented. Fifth, in Judeo-Christianity, hell is a place one chooses. No one is sent there against their will. We are all given a choice: love God and form a personal relationship with Him, ignore Him and have death be final, or oppose Him and spend eternity separated from Him. In Islam, most Muslims and all non-Muslims are predestined to hell. In other words, their God chooses to condemn them. Muhammad's dark spirit had a one-track mind. The Meccans were tormenting his prophet, calling him a lying wizard, a lousy plagiarizer, a possessed poet. He was bent on making them pay. But to put teeth in his bite, Muhammad had to prove that his spirit was God.
Quran 75, verse 32. So he did not accept the truth, nor did he pray. He called the truth a lie and turned his back. Then he gleefully went to his clan. Woe to you! Yes, woe! Destruction is near. Again, woe to you! Yes, woe! Again, your doom is near. Does man think that he will be left to wander aimlessly? Was he not a drop of sperm emitted in lowly form? Then did he become a leech-like clot. Then did the Lord make and fashion him in due proportion.
To understand Muhammad's motivation, his God's nature, and Islam's purpose, we must thoughtfully consider every revelation. Each provides something we can use to free Muslims from Islam, and in turn free ourselves from Islamic terror. In that light, let's review Madudi's writings on the 67th Surah.
It is characteristic of early revelations in that it presents the entire teachings of Islam and the object of the Prophet's mission so that they could be assimilated easily. During this time, most Meccans cursed the Prophet and prayed for his and the believers' destruction.
A few surahs ago, we were told that the unbelievers were in hell because they didn't pray. But that aside, we're about to discover
the entire teaching of Islam and the object of the Prophet's mission. Quran 67, verse 1. Blessed is he who holds the reins of kingship.
Why is this written in third person, if it's supposed to be the Lord who is speaking? And why is God blessing himself? Perhaps this is another confession, evidence of Muhammad's ambition. An insecure man saw himself as king. According to the Quran, death precedes life, and both are a test. This is followed by Islam's greatest omission. The test isn't explained. The Quran doesn't give the rules by which we are to be judged.
Who has created death and life that he may test you? Which of you is best in deeds? He is the mighty.
Muhammad's worldview was upside down. Unable to give his followers a reason to live, he gave Muslims a reason to die, testing their will to sacrifice their lives as martyrs. Islam was more about pain than paradise. Unable to convince men to choose his religion based upon its merits, Muhammad threatened them with damnation. And his religion was more about puffery than proof. Unable to provide a sign, a miracle, a prophecy, Muhammad pushed out his chest and simply proclaimed himself messenger.
Ishaq. I heard the apostle say, I have never invited anyone to accept Islam who hasn't shown signs of reluctance, suspicion, and hesitation.
Now that we know the motivation for Islam was power, it's time to meet its God and witness his teaching.
Quran 67, verse 3. We created 7 heavens, one above the other. Muhammad, can you see any fault in Ar-Rahman's creation? Look again. Can you see any rifts or fissures? Then look again and yet again. Your gaze turns back, dazed and tired. We have adorned the lowest skies with lamps, and we have made them missiles to drive away the devils against the stone Satans. And for them we have prepared the doom of hell and the penalty of torment in the most intense blazing fire. For those who reject their Lord is the punishment of hell. Evil, it is such a wretched destination. When they are flung therein, they will hear the terrible drawing in of their breath and loud moaning, even as the flames blaze forth, roaring with rage as it boils up, bursting with fury. Every time a fresh crowd is cast in, hell's wardens will ask, "Did no warner come to you?" They will say, "Yes, indeed, a warner did come to us, but we rejected him and said, 'The Lord never sent down any message. You are nothing more than an egregious delusion.'"
Mohammed's spirit has a name, Ar-Rahman, the deity of the Yemeni Hanifs. The first pillar of Islam has been pulverized. There is a God besides Allah. The Koran says so. But monotheism and religious foundations torn asunder, this idol is no less delusional or demented than Mohammed's Lord. Calling stars lamps that will be turned into missiles to drive away devils is dim-witted. But when it comes to gods, I'll take feeble-minded to demented any day. Ar-Rahman says that he personally prepared the torment of the blazing fire, and as before, he seems to relish the details. The fire is intense. It's a wretched place. The victims are flung in. Their breath is choked out. They moan, roaring with rage as the flames boil up around them, bursting in fury. Crowds of new victims are callously called fresh. Then, to add indignity to insult, the unbelievers are interrogated by hell's wardens. While creation and astronomy are obviously weaknesses on Ar-Rahman's resume, when it comes to pain and suffering, he is an expert. And that it's beneath God to ramble on in such a nasty tone, the Quran leaves us in a quandary. If God didn't inspire these words, who did? I'd like to propose a source of inspiration. We have ample evidence to suspect Khadija's involvement in conception of the profitable prophet plan and selling Muhammad on it. After 2 years of silence, we have a series of revelations that speak of making money and empowering and enriching destitute orphans, which would be Muhammad. We even have sworn testimony, confessions that purport to be scripture. This takes us to vengeance. It's the motivation for the onslaught of hellish pain so graphically and vociferously presented in these initial surahs. They strongly suggest personal knowledge. The terrible drawing in breath, the loud moaning that follows, flames boiling up, bursting forth in rage, combined with God shackling, choking, and pouring boiling water on men, is beyond normal imagination. Fortunately, we're given a clue as to the root cause that underlies this inhuman rage. Each time a fresh wound is inflicted, the tormentor tells his victims that it's their fault. They deserve their fate. If they weren't so bad, so unworthy, so undesirable, if they'd only listened, they wouldn't be punished. Such is the modus operandi of a typical child abuser. There is a considerable body of evidence in the Hadith and Quran that screams out to us today, Muhammad was molested. Nobody wanted him. He was abandoned by his father and rejected by his mother. Those with substance, his uncle Lahab and grandfather Mutalib, saw him as an inconvenience. The Bedouin woman into whose custody he was placed viewed him as unworthy, as she knew she wouldn't be paid for her services. The scene was ripe for abuse. In the low-tech world of the Arabian desert, campfires, scalding water, pitch, thorns, and shackles may well have been the implements of torture. And I suspect that the would-be prophet was told that he deserved the punishment. Then, as so often happens, the victim came full circle. Muhammad went from prey to perpetrator, from abused to abuser.